Good evening, fellas. Back again for another episode of the BGO Blind Pig, courtesy of Burgundy and Gold Obsession, bgobsession.com. The regulars have returned a little bit. We got John, known as Boone. We got Bob, known as Neophyte. Mark, known as Ohm. I'm Derek. I'm Silent Threat. And then joining us is a special guest, Henry, one of the OGs, one of the originals. He's been with us a long time. I think he might have even been one of the founding members, or at least one of in the infancy of the board.
Yep. I was dragged along as one of the founding members. Yeah.
Don't make it seem so fun for those people considering joining the board.
And for those who don't know, Henry goes by Henry.
Yes. If you can't
It's
find
very
him,
cryptic.
you can't find anybody. So
The most original of us.
It is
That's right.
indeed.
So before we get into the spectacle that was last Sunday, that luckily only 6 people had to, or 6 eyeballs had to endure live over the course of last Sunday. There's an elephant in the room that we probably should address, and I think I wanted to avoid it, but it's too big of a story now because forecasting out could be bigger, and something we might want to dedicate a podcast to in the not too distant future. I'm gonna throw something out there that just came across my Twitter at 5:22 p.m. There's now a report that the team offered former female team employees that had gone public with allegations of sexual assault hush money to keep them quiet for the I guess the damning evidence that they had brought to light regarding the scandal with Dan Snyder, that for some reason he's Neo from the Matrix and dodges every friggin' bullet with ease. I've got my thoughts. I'll open the floor a little bit. I've got a little bit of a conspiracy theory that I mentioned to Henry and to Mark, and I'm going to throw it out there afterwards. But instant reaction to now, the bigger problem of, or I guess another component, now we're offering hush money to women to keep them quiet. Does that explain any of this?
So I had the thought this morning as I was reading all the social media takes, only in DC or in Ashburn is the DEA raiding your team facility like yesterday's news. It's like, oh, that was last week. We're on to something.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, there's a bigger scandal to communicate.
I mean, I guess one question I would have is, okay, well, didn't we all assume they paid him hush money? Like they call it a settlement, I think, which to me, maybe this is something different. Maybe this is not like
No, I think this
whatever
is,
agreement they came to, but
I believe this is of the additional women that came forward. They were then approached by the team with an opportunity, I guess, if you want to call it that.
I mean, would that surprise anyone based on
No,
Dan
John, and that's exactly my reaction. This is not new to football. It's not new to Washington. It's not new to anybody, right? You have something like this, you offer money and you get someone to sign an NDA and you put it under the rug. This has been around longer than there have been law enforcement agencies.
How many times did this happen with Trump and women in the last two presidential elections ago, right? It's not even Washington, right? This happens in corporate America.
Yep.
Pretty much daily. I'd be surprised if it hadn't happened, if you really want to know the truth. This is why we have lawyers. None of you guys have a law degree, right?
No.
No, thanks.
No, but where I work, I can't swing a dead cat without hitting one.
So I have an intriguing secondary question to that. Would anyone other than me be thrilled if that actually comes to light, to actually be factual? Because that's the kind of thing that could get Mr. Snyder out of the building finally. I think that's to the level of stuff that has to come out for us to finally be rid of him and maybe have a chance to shed the curse that we've had for 20 years.
If they can prove that he was involved in paying off, the women, if he can say, I'm shocked to find that out, and we'll get to the bottom of it, and it'll never happen again, which is what he's been saying this whole time and has been working.
He'd never cop to it, but if there is a paper trail somewhere
I
at
don't
some
even
point.
think
Right.
I don't even think you need a paper trail. Simple deduction would lead you to believe that this came after the scandal, which means all the other people were rid. They're gone. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
but
saying? And
simple,
nobody's going to say Ron Rivera offered these ladies money to shut up, or
I don't,
Jason Wright,
I don't
or
know.
Julie
That,
Donaldson.
I don't know that simple deduction is going to work in this case, Derek. This is a closed shop, good old boys club. Like I said on the board today, Dan doesn't even have to know everything. He just has to know a little bit, and the right little bit. And nobody's going to want to kick him out of the club for fear that he talks. You know, it's they're going to have the proverbial smoking gun. And
It's going to have to be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff and the amount of evidence for it is going to have to be so overwhelming that the NFL has no choice but to get rid of him. Kind of like the Ray Rice situation, where when you see him dragging his girlfriend out of the elevator, well, you know, we don't really know what happened and we'll suspend him for 2 games. But when you see him on video knocking her out, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, okay, we'll do something about it. And we're going to need to see that, you know, that level of evidence against Snyder for any of this to make a
John, to
difference.
answer your question was, would it be, yeah, it would be great if it led to that. What I think it can be is yet another straw on the camel, you know? You keep adding them and adding them and adding them. Eventually maybe we'll reach critical mass. But that, I think, is probably the end result that at least the 5 of us would want to see, right? Am I wrong on that? It's been a long time coming and it doesn't seem to be getting any better with this guy here.
So one thing I think our default reaction to any kind of scandal, whatever the latest scandal is with Snyder, is that nothing sticks to this guy. He's like Tony Soprano, you know, until he sits down in that pizza parlor finally. He always manages to wiggle his way out of it or not have any, you know, provable culpability, as Henry was talking about. But I think there's one difference that I've started to see as opposed to when the Wilkinson report first came out, where it kind of, there was a lot of noise, especially from female media folks. And then it kind of dissipated quickly because everyone figures nothing's going to happen. The NFL actually empowered him, you know, with the team ownership increase that he had. And he fired Allen. So that kind of, you know, that's the whipping boy for all the wrongdoings. But today I saw a lot of mainstream media people, I don't know if it was real outrage or feigned outrage, or whether it's kind of the woke era that we're in now. But there was a lot of talk about this is unacceptable. Why is John Gruden being held accountable when there's 650,000 emails related to Washington that haven't been released? I saw a lot. Sports Illustrated, all the major sports companies were commenting, like big names were commenting. So I don't know that, and the NFL Players Association has requested that they all be released. Not that that necessarily matters, but that's a little bit different than what you saw when the report when the report didn't first come out.
Right.
That's fair. But and we started before we went live with this, we were talking about this is not over. This is just beginning. Those 650,000 emails, you want to think Dan Snyder isn't CC'd on a few of those, and that Bruce Allen is on those. This is going to all be an avalanche. It's going to continue to pour onto this team.
So along the lines of that paper trail thing, and this is why I think it's going to be difficult to find that smoking gun, Dan Snyder's not on email. Mike Wise released a story like 7 years ago. He's never been on email. There is no Dan Snyder at redskins.com or Dan Snyder at washingtonfootballteam.com. He doesn't do email at all. So we're never going to find him CC'd on one of these. We're never going to find something originating with him sending naked pictures of the cheerleaders. It's not out there. It's not in that 650,000.
I think if it's bad enough, it might not matter though, you know, because ultimately, like any CEO, ultimately he's accountable for what happens within that organization. I see you guys shaking your heads. I get it. And maybe it's wishful thinking, but I do think, but you're right, because Gary Fitzgerald, who used to be the media guy, like when we were doing game coverage back in the day, he was the guy at Redskins Park. He was kind of Larry Michaels before there was a Larry Michaels, and he said that Snyder never used email, and like that was common knowledge that he had an email address, but he never used it. But it could be bad enough. What's in his emails could be bad enough that it doesn't matter whether he's participating actively. It's just too much for him.
Well, the other thing that you wonder is, when is Bruce Allen going to go nuclear? His name's now back in the mud. You know what I mean? And his name's going to continue to go through the mud. So when does he say, you know what, enough is enough? This is what really happened.
It's all still out there, my friends. It's a good thing
And
we
the
have a
other thing
weekly
is-
podcast.
When does John Gruden go nuclear? Because you telling me that this is all done via Bruce Allen's official email address. So before, one more point, and I'll throw this out to you guys and to get your reaction, and I started thinking about this today, is I wonder if I have an answer why nothing sticks to Snyder with this. And that's because the NFL knew this was coming 3 years ago when they started talking about this investigation. And they came to him and said, this is coming. We're tired of the negative PR. We're tired of people protesting outside of stadiums. You change the name and we won't make it stick. Which is why they didn't support the name anymore. Which is why they didn't oppose Nike when Nike threatened to pull merchandise. You think the NFL is going to sign off on them pulling 1/32 of their revenue, or let it happen without them being a part of that conversation? And there was no pushback from that.
I wouldn't put it past the NFL to do something like that. I mean, the way they maneuvered robbing the Redskins and the Cowboys of cap space in 2012, when there was no rule broken. They robbed the Redskins of cap space, and then they twisted the arm of the NFLPA to not, complain about it. I could see that, them doing that. I don't know if that is the case, but it's certainly
I think
possible.
the other factor is that people are scared to death of Dan Snyder, and probably for good reason. I mean, 2 years ago, Bruce Allen and him were badminton buddies, or, Coors Light buddies, or whatever it was. And now he's dragging them into court, trying to pin all the negative articles on him as the primary leak source. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think that's common knowledge, is that you better not cross Dan Snyder, because you'll end up with a ruined career, or no life savings left after he's drug you into court for
but
years.
There are 31 other Dan Snyders at the top of franchises in the NFL. And I'll tell you what, the scariest guy in the whole business may be Roger Goodell. This is beginning to feel more and more like a bad mob movie. I mean, truly. And do we get Dan Snyder? Maybe, but maybe we get him on tax evasion. I don't know. But we're never going to get him on bootlegging. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, these NFL owners have not been good guys going back to the beginning of the NFL. Think about the guys back in the day. We just didn't know about it. We were not
There was
getting
no social media.
And investigative reporters weren't, the New York Times wasn't publishing things. What's the apocryphal story of Babe Ruth? And this has nothing to do with our podcast, but it's one of my favorite stories, and it's indicative of how much things have changed. There's a bunch of the team is traveling. The Yankees are traveling back in the 1920s on a train, and there's a room full of media and press and all that sitting around. And this scantily clad woman comes running up the aisle from one car and through to the other. And right behind her comes the Bambino, just wasted and half dressed, and chasing her down the aisle and out of the other car. And one of the young reporters says, "Did you see that? That was the Bambino." And the old grizzled reporter says, "No, and you didn't either." Those times are gone. Nowadays, that would be on Twitter in 30 seconds. It's a different world we're in.
Mhm.
Well, the last comment I want to make about the whole thing is, because we haven't talked about it, is I don't know how much more fans can take. And I kind of had some back and forth with some folks today, and I think we're all worn down and beaten down beyond belief. Just the product on the field is enough to do that to you, which we're about to get into. But I can only compartmentalize so much, and I got nowhere else to put anything. I I can only love a team and a franchise, and I know my friend Henry has been with me way ahead of me for years. But I can't continue to support this team if we're going to be the evil empire run by the little troll and his minion wife. I just can't, and that's where I'm at. And so I don't know whether I'll be a fan a year from now. It probably depends on, to a certain extent, what, if anything, they do about this.
I have to say it out loud. Yes, but if we were winning Super Bowls right now, it might look different. And I'm not proud to say that, but yeah, I'm almost done. I'm almost done with all of it. And I'm just done with the losing as much as anything. I don't care about the personalities. I don't want them abusing women. I don't want them cheating and lying and being racist. But if they win,
I'll turn it around on you, Mark. If we didn't have the evil empire with Dan Snyder at the head of it, we'd just be in year 1.25 of the Rivera era, and we'd be saying, yeah, it's a new regime. We got to be patient. It wouldn't be, this is just yet another chapter of suckitude in an endless future of more suckitude. And we can't even feel good about being a fan of this team. So I don't buy that personally.
I'm not
Wow,
sure.
I was worried about me being too negative tonight.
I'm not sure I know what you're disagreeing with there. I'm not sure what
I'm disagreeing with that. We'd be okay with everything if we were winning.
I'm saying it would feel
be
different.
A welcome distraction.
I'm saying it would feel different. It would feel different, my friend. I know it would feel different.
I think for me, it's not just the Washington footballers, it's the entire NFL. I mean, this kind of thing, it's hard to be a fan of a league that operates like this.
You're not wrong.
And this is not a new thing. It's been, the NFL has been nefarious for a long time now. And it's hard to be a fan of a team run by a horrible person in a league run by horrible people. At some point, winning would really help.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think that's kind of what I'm saying. I also think I'm old enough now where I don't suffer as much as I used to when we lose. I've gotten used to it, and I've got other things in my life that have filled the hole that this team has left. I love the game of football, and it's still the best football there is to watch anywhere. I love big time college football, and I love the NFL. I happen to be bleeding this color because I was brought to it as a young guy. I can't stop. I can't quit them, but I love the game. So I keep coming back. I watch Monday night because I want to see Lamar Jackson run around and play Superman. I think that's what brings me back now more than this team does.
I've made no secret anywhere of the fact that I've kind of had one foot in and one foot out for 8-10 years now. I fell in love with the world's game of football, right? Soccer, and started watching English Premier League and national team. And for whatever reason, this damn game keeps pulling me back in. Mark stole my line. Just when I thought I was out, right? And that's happened about 4 times in the last 10 years. Where I've literally had a foot in the door. I've had a resignation letter to the board written about 3 times, torn it up and thrown it away, right? As much because of people on this call as the team, if I'm brutally honest about it. But yeah, this is just, I have 2 daughters, and I hate to say this, but I look at the world differently now, and it's sad. It's an indictment of who I was, I guess, before I had 2 daughters, right? I noticed things that I didn't notice before, and I expect different things now, and this is one of those things that I expect to change, and I don't see it changing with my football team, and that bugs me. What bugs me even more is I pretty much guarantee you it's going on behind doors at the other 31 franchises. I pretty much guarantee it. This isn't the, we're just too dumb to hide it. We're just too idiotic to keep it behind closed doors. Maybe we're an easy target because of the name. Maybe we're an easy target because of Snyder, and yeah, maybe we're an easy target because it's a whole lot worse and it's covered up better other places. I don't know, but
and that may be one of the reasons why Snyder's still escaping any accountabilities, because it is going on all over the league and the other guys don't want to, indict one of their own for something that's going on there with their own team.
Well,
And no one really wants to hold up a mirror, none of the owners.
Well, we've seen a lot of reckonings over the last 5 years or so, no matter how you feel about that, where things that used to be okay, like, beating black people that didn't commit any crime, those kinds of things, because you have the authority to do it, or you think you do. There's a lot of things that we've accepted or ignored, maybe not accepted, but by tacitly ignoring them, gave permission for them to go on without any kind of repercussions. And maybe the NFL is due for a reckoning. I'm not sure they can be the ones to make that happen, but at some point, it can't be 1965 forever. At some point, there's some things that just can't be tolerated. And I love what you said, Bob, because I have a daughter too. And without getting into a lot of detail, I had a moment when I was probably my daughter was like 13, where I realized that, like, being a middle-aged, what's the best way to say this? A healthy adult male around my 13-year-old daughter, or making certain jokes, or, whether they were not with no bad intention, but things that were borderline, I realized that I can't be that guy and be a good dad to a 13-year-old. There's certain things where I had to learn, like, what, you're not in the Marine Corps anymore. You're not out drinking beer with your buddies. You need to, like, get your shit together and set a good example for your daughter. So, I mean, and we all have to learn that as individuals. When is the NFL, and specifically Dan Snyder, when are they going to learn that it's not 1965 anymore?
When the money talks, when the corporate sponsors start pulling out.
And in all honesty, that's the part I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for Nike to weigh in on this again. I'm waiting for
Football
FedEx,
Talk just released an article 4 minutes before we came on, and I didn't even have a chance to click on it and read it, but it said it's time for the sponsors to get involved. And if that's a national, Florio has never packed a punch when it came to the Washington football team. He has never held back. A lot of people call him a giant Redskins hater because of the way he talks about the team and Dan Snyder, even though we're all saying the same thing when we're talking to each other. For a long time, for the majority of I'm 37. I remember the 91 Super Bowl. Unfortunately, I remember the years after that. You know what I mean? But for a long time, growing up, I always had the team, and I always had the guys you would root for. The team might not have been good, but you rooted for Brian Mitchell. You rooted for Darryl Green. You rooted for Ryan Kerrigan. You could root for Trent Williams and Chris Samuels and all of these guys that you could root for. And it's getting to the point now where you can't even do that anymore. I mean, not that the players have anything to do with it, but it's getting exhausting trying to justify being a fan.
I would be very interested to hear how this conversation would go with a bunch of Washington football fans who are in their 20s and 30s.
That's the problem. There aren't any.
Yeah, there are.
I was going to say, are there any?
Yeah, there are. If you listen to talk radio and you look in the stands, they're not all old white guys like us. There are younger folks there. It's a lot more diverse. All I'm saying is we're looking at this from the perspective of guys. I mean, Derek, you're a little bit younger, but we've seen a lot over the last. I'm 60. I've been watching this team for 50 years. That's a lot of mileage and a lot of weight. And guys who don't have that, my son is 30. He's a perfect example. He's not weighed down by the baggage as much. He is still hopeful about the future, and he does still care about the team and cares about the players. All I'm saying is that our perspectives are all pretty well in tune here. We all kind of look the same, and we all have some of the same mileage on us. I think it would be well served to bring in some additional guests, you know what I mean, to get some different perspectives.
And we
Which
all
is-
literally came up through the same avenues. I mean, we've been on this board for almost 10 years now, right?
Mhm.
We came from another board that we were all on for multiple decades. And that's not, I was on a board for a couple, like I was on that board almost, I'm not going to say almost as long as you guys, but for a very large portion of my life, I was on that board, and it meant a lot. And I met more people that are still in my life now than people that I met before that. So I honestly, if we're going to be straight up here, it was probably about 10 years ago that the tailgate became more enjoyable than the product on the field. But I still went to the game because it was fun to hang out with my buddies and go to the tailgate. That part of the atmosphere was what kept me in. And I'll still root for the team. I can't not. I just don't know how. You know what I mean? But it's getting harder and harder when not only do you not like what's on the field, you don't like what's off of it.
Yeah.
So I wonder how we would have felt if we had won the game on Sunday.
There you go.
That
Nice
game
segue.
against the
So let's move
Saints.
on. Let's move on.
Nice segue.
Good segue. So I heard a damning piece of evidence on the radio today, and it was the fact. Well, I heard two damning pieces of evidence. One was the route combination that beat us for 72 yards is the same route combination that not only one, not two, not three, but all four other teams have played against us, and all four other teams have hit against us with the exact same lineup, route combination, and everything. And the other thing that I heard today was that at the snap of that play, none of the 11 players on defense were set. None of the linemen had their hand in the dirt. The safeties were talking to each other.
Mm.
The linebackers were moving each other around. The corners were not in there where they were ultimately supposed to be lined up at. Everybody was standing up at the snap of that ball.
Clearly the Saints did their homework.
Yeah, when everybody's standing around looking at each other, say hike and run fast.
Well, right. A good team will do that. If they're seeing the other team is disorganized, you get to the line and snap the ball.
Sean Payton is a hell of a coach. Sean Payton is one of the best offensive coaches in NFL history. And if you have a glaring tendency or weakness, he's gonna find it. So that really doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what happened to me. Mark and I, as we were telling you guys offline, we had a big golf weekend. So we didn't watch the game live. We golfed and we had a great time and we kept track of it on our phone. And then we went back and watched it later. But the funny thing is I heard all of the post-game reaction from fans and media types. So I was expecting a total debacle, just a dismal show of football. And so when I watched the game, I was like, we actually played pretty well up until like the middle of the third quarter. We really had the better of it. But the first thing I wrote down in my notes as I was watching that game is our secondary is killing us. Our secondary, it's not the defense. I mean, the defense is not great, but the secondary, we're just getting exploited over and over and over again. And, we finally had a game where we got pressure on the quarterback, whether that's because for whatever reason, whether that's we played better or the scheme, we did a better job with scheme or whatever, or they're not very good on the O-line. I don't know, but we got pressure and pretty consistent pressure. But it doesn't matter because our secondary can't cover anyone. So I don't know. I feel like at this point they've got to switch. They can't just keep throwing the same guys out there in the defensive backfield because we're gonna win 4 games if they do that all year.
I'll take it a step further. Landon Collins. We get beat on the same play for 5 times now, 4 times in this season, and Landon Collins appears to my untrained eye to be the guy that lost his man, that didn't pick up the coverage. He's, as far as I'm concerned, Landon Collins is culpable on both big plays this last weekend. You take those 2 touchdowns off the board, the Skins win the game.
Well, I was listening to the radio when that play happened.
Which one, the long bomb or the Hail Mary into the end zone?
The long bomb.
Okay.
And I remember Landon Collins after the game said he was trying to disguise his coverage when they snapped the ball. And after that play, Fred Smoot, of all people, was like, he got caught trying to disguise his coverage and they just snapped, like he could see it from up there. that, oh, there goes Landon Collins just trying to disguise his coverage, and they snap the ball. So clearly whatever they were trying to disguise was not working. I mean, they saw us foodling about in the backfield and snap the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the other thing is it's not like they quick snapped us. They were at the line ready to go. And we were not. And that should tell you everything you need to know about how that play went down. And if you guys watched the play, Landon Collins was shallow. He was about 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. He was turned and heading back straight towards the end zone. Bobby McCain was coming down, and he was playing in the box. I have been a proponent of disguising coverages. But what I don't want to do is disguise your coverage to the detriment because you're asking somebody who can't do something, do it. If you're going to disguise it, do it the other way. Drop McCain back or throw Fuller back and bring Landon Collins down into the box or something. We're also talking about a different system where before I was wanting to confuse people by playing Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, not Jameis Winston. He's going to take a shot. He's not going to think. So if that guy runs free, he's going to shoot it.
You're playing
So-
Winston, really just get pressure on him and he'll make mistakes. I
And
mean,
he
they
did.
saw that early in the game.
Yeah.
Two out of the first 3 drives were turnovers.
Yeah.
My key to the game, one of the keys to the game that I spouted out last week was shut down Kamara and make Winston beat us. We did, and it didn't matter. Kamara ran, they ran for 98 rushing yards total. We actually outrushed them by about 40 yards, but it doesn't matter. We outrushed them. We forced them to pass. We got pressure, and he still torched our defensive backfield. So I don't know what the solution to that is other than get a different defensive backfield, because that's going to happen over and over and over again if we don't make some kind of change.
This is the first game this year we won the time of possession battle, isn't it? And we didn't just win it. I mean, we
Well, we
ran away and
dominated
did
it.
right? We
Everything
had-
but the fourth quarter. The only quarter that they had more time, the ball more than us, was the fourth quarter.
Well,
So-
for the
to be fair,
game,
when
we
you
had
drop a
like
72-yard touchdown and then a Hail Mary with 8 seconds to go in the first half, you're talking about 14 points in about 30 seconds.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
listen,
to
listen.
be,
But the point is, the defense doesn't have an excuse this week of being on the field all damn game
Right.
long. They were on the field all of like what 22 minutes.
Right.
22 minutes, and they gave up 33 points.
Well, they were
I
on the
think we-
field for
I think we
only-
had the ball for 13 minutes in the third quarter, 12 or 13 minutes.
The
Almost
Saints,
entire
the Saints didn't need to hold the ball. Listen to they had 5 touchdown drives, 3 plays, 75 yards, a minute 14, 6 plays, 60 yards, 3 minutes, 1 play, 49 yards, 8 seconds, halftime, 4 plays, 26 yards, 130 after we threw the interception on our own end. They only had 1 long drive, and that was to win the game at the end, right? When they go for it on 4th down on their own 34-yard line, which what did you turn and say to me, John, on the golf course when we saw that? That was an FU call by Sean Payton. That was a disrespect call to our defense. I mean, we're down by 5 points. If we stop that or they punt to us, Taylor's got the ball with 4 minutes left or something like that to chance to go win the game. The defense, I thought by and large played pretty well in large spurts, but every time when they really failed, and they gave up really quick touchdown drives. We had 2 touchdown drives and 3 field goals. They had 5 touchdown drives. We
So
couldn't
Rivera
stop them
got
when we
pummeled.
had to.
Rivera got pummeled for making a statement, something, I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying something to the effect of, well, it was just a handful of plays that cost us the game. And when I heard that, it irritated me just like it did most fans, but he's not wrong. He's
not
really not
wrong.
wrong. I'll tell you one set of plays that drove me insane. And it's not the Hail Mary, although that was bad. And it wasn't the long bomb touchdown. That was bad. But the series of plays that drove me insane were when the punter, for like the 3rd time in the game, pinned us down within the 5-yard line. Literally did it 3 times. We're on the 2-yard line, and at the start of the 4th quarter, we're still in. We're in the middle of the game. We're in the thick of it. The game is.
Pass,
You're bringing
pass,
this up, brother.
pass.
We passed 3 times
One
on
of
a
them
day
was an
when
interception.
Heineke was clearly not at his best on Sunday for whatever reason. He made some good plays, but I mean, he only completed about 40-something% of his passes.
And they had just had a drive where they ran the ball down
Yes.
to Saints' throat.
So-
Their defense was on its heels. They were exhausted. That was the perfect time to run the ball.
I don't understand. I don't even put that on Heineke. It's like that. You're
That's on
you're
Turner.
basically saying, please make an interception on us.
Mhm.
That
I'm so glad
Well,
you
and-
brought that up because I
and-
mentioned it. And Henry's not even joking. That
Mhm.
that drive before that, I think we ran the ball every play. And
There
it
was one
wasn't-
pass.
It wasn't.
One pass.
They weren't cheapies. We were ripping them off 8 and 9 yards a pop at times. We were doing jet sweeps. It was the best play calling I've seen from Scott Turner all season, and it worked. And then it was, we're down inside the 2. Let's just put Heineke in the end zone with the ball in his hands and hope he doesn't mess up. It
So-
was
Somebody has to say, I'll be the one to just say it. I'm going to go back, and I can't speak to it now because I watched that series and I knew what I was looking for because I knew that happened at some point. What I didn't do was take a look at how the Saints played that defensively. Scott Turner might have some idea about the kind of defense he's going to see. If I'm the Saints right there, I got 8 and 9 in the box.
You know what? At that point in the game, the way you had just beat them up and the way you had been beating them up all game long, except for the 5 plays the defense gave up or whatever, your offense has been pounding it on their defense all day.
But maybe not against specific run sets down there is what I'm saying. I'd like to get some insight into what his thoughts were. I think one of them was an empty set, but I think on 2 of them, he had somebody back there with him. They may have had more than one call, right? Most, you go to the line with a run option and a pass option, and the quarterback decides based on what the defense is doing. I would really like to see a breakdown of that on that one thing, because I agree. It sounds like a really stupid thing to do at that point in the game. I'd like someone to speak to the other side of that. Somebody smarter than me about football who has access to that stuff. I'll look at the film. I'll break down the film for next
There you go. Go for it.
which drive was that?
That was that
That
third
was
quarter.
that was the end of the no. I think it was the start of the 4th quarter. That's what the stats book said, but I mean, I could.
I thought you were talking about the long drive. The long drive was
That's what I'm talking about.
Drive was third quarter, and then the Saints went 3 and out. The defense held them to 3 and out, so we had theoretically a gassed defense coming back on the field after 3 plays, and we threw the football 3 times from our own end zone. Yeah, yeah, you're right, Mark. It's entirely possible that there was some type of an audible, or we had options and Heineke picked the wrong one, or Heineke picked what he thought was the best one. Who knows? Well, Scott Turner knows.
And how about this Saints punter punting 3 of them out inside the 2-yard line? So I saw some arcane stat on NFL saying that hasn't happened since like 2017 or whatever. That guy might have been the MVP of the game. Those were game-changing punts.
I thought that. Yeah, I agree.
Well, and that's what Canadian Hog said in his studs and duds. That was his only 2 studs were on the other side of the ball. And we haven't even talked about the fact that Lattimore just took McLaren right out of the game.
No, he didn't. Did you watch that? McLaurin was beating him up.
I think they each had their moments. I thought Terry was okay, but the guy's pretty good cornerback.
Okay, so
too.
here's your interesting stat this week, right? Or for the season so far. When McLaren's over 100 yards, we win the game. When McLaren's under 100 yards, we lose the game. He had 67 yards. And when we needed him desperately bad, Lattimore was on him like a wet blanket.
We talk about Heineke and his development. And I watched the podcast last week, and I know you guys were talking about him and throwing it up into the end zone on that play. And McLaurin went up and got it. And I think Heineke counts on that from McLaurin, that sort of, he's my guy. I'm gonna throw it in his direction and let him go get it. And he, for much of the that day could not get it.
Mhm.
Well, I think one thing about Heineke, and I mentioned this last week, so I'll be a broken record, but I think the one thing that he does poorly, I still love Heineke. I still think he played really hard and he did some good things yesterday, and we were in it until that fourth quarter. But I think one thing that they really need to talk to him about is if the play's not there. I love that he does multiple reads, but if the play's not there, you got to get rid of the damn ball, because what he does is he doesn't have that right. He doesn't have a Jameis Winston arm. So when you're back there scrambling around and 3 or 4 seconds have gone by, guys are everything closes up. You know, the defensive backs close on the receivers. You're counting on guys like breaking out of their right and just trying to get open. You got to have a cannon arm for those kind of plays to get it there, because the window's not 2 feet now, it's 6 inches. And you could see yesterday or Sunday that he was off just enough that when he was trying to make those late throws, he could have had 4 picks easily. He really could have. So
He puts a lot of air under the ball.
Yes, he does.
Equally, there was an interception at the 1 yard line. And I think it might have been Samuel.
Yep.
Where
Samuel.
That ball was just underthrown there.
What?
That ball was just underthrown. I mean,
It
he's
was
trying to go back
underthrown, and
shoulder
there
fade
was
there.
nobody between Samuel and the back of the end zone.
Yeah, it was a bad pass.
Throw
That
the
wasn't a
thing to
bad
the back
decision.
pylon.
That was just underthrown. The other one I
Oh.
thought was a bad decision. He threw it late into coverage up the field, and I don't know what he was looking at on the second one.
So, Bob, I guess to my point, did you watch it live?
Yeah. Yep.
To double down on the underthrow, there were throws that McLaurin was open for that were not good throws.
Sure.
There were a couple where he had Lattimore beat and he had to slow down for the ball, and Lattimore was able to make a play on multiple occasions. There was also a play on 4th and 12, 4th and 14, that McLaurin caught the ball and his left pinky toe was the only thing that prevented that from being a 25-yard catch.
That was almost the most amazing catch of the year. But again, Lattimore bumped him. Lattimore pushed him.
Yeah, against other corners, he makes those underthrown or not great thrown ball catches.
That's a fair argument. That's a fair argument. But when I watched that game live, head to head, I don't know that there was a dominance on either side of that. I think a better quarterback and McLaurin a better arm, and McLaurin goes over 100, because I think the balls are in different places.
He had 11 targets.
Right.
Caught 4
And he only
passes.
came down with 4.
Yep.
Humphreys had a pretty good game.
Yeah, he did.
He doesn't get any attention, but he caught some pretty big passes.
And
Yep.
Dax Milne had arguably one of the catches of the year, where he had toes on the ground and he was lateral and ended up catching that ball to extend a drive. All right.
One target, one catch.
We got beat up by the Saints. We know the frustrations.
Well, all right, I got to tell you, we didn't get beat up by the Saints. We were right there and had 2 big defensive breakdowns, I thought, that cost us any chance to win another heartbreaker.
No, the truth is we beat up the Saints.
Physically, I think we did. Stats say we did, but the scoreboard, when we had to have the stops at the end of the game, we didn't get them. And the Hail Mary is going to live in infamy. That was one of the saddest plays I've seen our team.
That's going to go down with the
perform.
swinging gate. That was just so bad.
I don't understand how you can't jump. You just jump. I saw no effort.
And you can get away with it. They never call PI on that. You see defensive guys hooking and elbowing and doing all of that. They never call anything. So there's no excuse not to get up and go after it. That was beyond brutal.
So I want to, before we move on to the Chiefs game, not to shut the conversation down by any means, if you guys want to make other points, I just wanted to ask you a question. If Fitzpatrick were healthy enough to play right now, who starts? He's not, obviously, but it's probably not going to be long before he is healthy enough to come back. Who do you start?
I don't pull Taylor yet. I mean, Fitzpatrick hasn't played. I play the guy who's been playing, and his team supports him. They have a rhythm. He makes mistakes, but Fitzpatrick is literally coming in off the street. He's got no playing time with these guys. What's he throwing? 6 passes as a teamer?
And he didn't really look good in the preseason or in the first half of the game he was in. I mean,
yeah, I agree. If he
I don't
was
think he's
a
gonna be any
younger
better.
guy with legs and experience and all that, but he's kind of a sitting target back there. No, I would not. I
No.
would be shocked if they put him back in.
I play Heineke, and I play Heineke because he doesn't have Fitzmagic's arm, but what he does have that Fitz doesn't have is that escapability. He's got a feel in the pocket, and when he decides to go, he's gone. And Fitz doesn't have any of that. Honestly, if we put Fitz back in the game, I feel like he's injured again in a couple of games.
And what are you trying to prove? If you legitimately think he's going to help you win and you're trying to make the playoffs and all that, that's fine. But if this is a team that arguably is probably headed to sub 500, it certainly looks that way now. They're not a playoff contender as of now. Why
Might
do
as
you
well see what Heineke's got.
keep
you
the
know?
young guy in there? Hell, I'd rather see Allen before I see Fitzpatrick.
That was my point. I want to know if we're going to see Heineke versus the New Orleans Saints or Heineke versus the New York Giants on a more consistent basis. You know what I mean? Let me know what we've got with him.
It might depend on the defense and especially whoever's covering McLaurin.
But my
I hate to
point,
say it.
my point being is if you now take Fitzpatrick and put him back in the game and then Heineke doesn't play, then we go back into next season again wondering. I don't care what the outcome is. I want to know. You know what I mean? If Heineke's going to be your backup for the next 8 years, that's fine. He can prove now that that's the ceiling. But I'd rather not have him flash enough that makes you wonder, and then you put another guy in, and then you continue to wonder.
I would
think-
argue that there are plenty of teams in this league that would love to have a backup quarterback that plays as well as Taylor Heineke's playing right now after only 5 games. You know,
I think he's lined himself up to be a backup quarterback in this league for probably the better part of a decade.
I do
Yeah.
too. I think he's a perfect backup quarterback. He's exactly what you want in a backup quarterback. He's a guy with energy who comes in and runs the offense and runs around.
had a
I
minimum,
know I'm in
John.
the minority, but I'm not sure he's not. I'm not convinced that he can't be a starter. I still think when he's on, man, he plays as well as anybody.
And
He
John,
just doesn't have the arm.
I don't
think he has the
disagree
arm.
with you. And I started to do this earlier today, and something came up at work and prevented me. But I'm going to pull a dozen name quarterbacks, right? Obvious franchise players, and go back and look at their first 5 or 6 games and compare that with Taylor Heineke's 5 or 6 games. I think we keep seeing a 28-year-old guy and forget that he's only started 5 games in this league. That's it. And I'm sorry, if he were, I contend to this day, if Taylor were the 3rd pick in the first round of the draft and playing this way, we'd all be thrilled.
Yeah, but you can't teach arm strength. And I think that's why he wasn't the 3rd pick in the first round, because he doesn't have the arm.
Yeah, I'm
And
with Henry
He's got
on this.
great pocket awareness and he's a smart guy. And that's why he'll stay in this league. But he just doesn't have the arm.
John,
I guess what I would say to that is obviously you're right. He doesn't, but it only hurts him when he doesn't mitigate against that. Like when you're trying to make plays that you can't make in the NFL, those late throws that he needs to learn. I don't have the arm at this level to get it there in that window. If he can learn that, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a barrier to overcome. But if
when I said that, I just meant because that at a minimum, some teams are going to look at him as a good backup. I still want to know if he can prove he can be a starter. Heineke, I think, can start in this league. And the way that he's going to do that is he's going to play with anticipation. He's going to be that guy that throws the ball when the receiver hasn't even broke yet, because then the DB can't make the play on it. He's the guy that's not going to be forcing the ball 35 yards downfield on the run into double coverage, because he's going to have to learn that that's just a throw he can't make. So people want to keep comparing him to Brett Favre as a gunslinger, but Brett Favre could throw the ball 60 yards on a rope if he wanted to do it. And that's how he got away with it. You know what I'm saying? Heineke's going to be that Doug Flutie type, where if the play's not there, you run for 7 and you go to 2nd and 3 instead of trying to force it 20 yards downfield.
And FYI, it's just as dangerous to have the arm. I mean, I can't be the only guy here that remembers the day Sean Taylor picked Brett Favre off 3 times in one game because Favre kept thinking, I've got the arm to beat this kid. And guess what?
You know, you know what Brett Favre said? He said, I've never seen somebody cover ground like that in my life.
Right. But, you know, he had the big arm and he beat everybody in the league with that big arm. And then along comes Sean Taylor, and Brett couldn't get out of the mindset of, I've got the arm to beat this guy. So it worked. You know, it's a knife that cuts both ways. Having the arm is great, but if you start depending on it, again, football's a game that's played between the ears.
Well, yeah, Jeff George had one of the best arms in the history of the NFL, but he was a knucklehead. I'm not backing off on the point. You can mitigate and you can be a very good, you might even be an NFL starting quarterback. I don't think the way the league is now and the way offense is played now, that unless you've got a gun and you can make those plays, that we see them on the highlights every Sunday night. You watch guys like, I won't say the one guy in Kansas City's name because John thinks I've got having a love affair with the guy, but all the big time quarterbacks, they've got that gun and they throw it into places that you cringe, and then they fit it in. That's how you win big these days.
Look, and my response to that, and I'm not comparing the two, but Tom Brady lived and died 6 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
He's got the arm though, Derek. He's got
What
the man.
arm?
He's got a
What
great
arm?
arm. Are you kidding me?
He never used it until he had Moss. When did he throw it to Amendola 60 yards downfield? He never did it.
They didn't give him receivers to go downfield.
So
I'm
he
not
He
never,
has a
saying
better
he
arm
had-
than Heineke.
He has a
I understand
considerably
that
bigger arm than Heineke does.
of course he does. I'm not arguing that they have the same arm, but my point is that the offense can be made a similar offense to that, where you've got guys that can juke somebody out in a phone booth, can get enough separation, and you don't need a howitzer. You can play that game of anticipation. Now,
So
I'm not arguing Heineke.
What
is
quarterbacks
really-
are we talking about that are elite quarterbacks that have an arm that we would compare to Taylor Heineke's?
You could argue Peyton Manning had the same arm when he won the Super Bowl in Denver.
Or less.
Okay.
What was the difference?
Okay.
He had a
Or
top
less.
5 defense.
He had a great defense, and he had the best football mind that we've ever seen on the field, probably, other than maybe Tom Brady.
No,
And-
I think Peyton had a better football brain than Brady. I think Brady's got more.
Natural
Brady-
You
ability.
didn't ask
No.
me about arm, you
No,
asked me
I think
about
Brady
arm.
scares the living.
No, I
That's-
did. No, and
that-
you're right. That was a special case. That's Peyton.
That's throwing with anticipation. That's understanding the route combination. That's understanding the play. If Heineke can do that, I think he has a place in the league. Is he going to be a guy that's going to make 7 Pro Bowls, be a league MVP? Probably not. But
Did you guys watch the opening game, the very first game of the season when Brady played Dallas? They had a comparison of Brady early in his career and Brady late in his career. He has worked on his form and his delivery, and he actually has a faster release now than he did at 24.
right.
He may not have a stronger arm than he did at 24, but he's got
But
a
it's
faster
quicker.
release, and he's quicker, and he makes better decisions than he did when he was 24. And there's
He also has
absolutely
had-
no reason that Heineke can't do some of the same things. There's also no reason his arm has to stay, as I hesitate to use this term because he's an NFL quarterback and weak should not apply, but comparatively it does. You know, there's no reason he can't make that arm stronger. Is he ever going to have Brett Favre's cannon? No, he's not. But he can certainly make that arm stronger over time, and he can make better releases and increase his accuracy. And he's already playing with a bit of swagger and doing a pretty darn good job. I think the guy's got a life in the NFL, and potentially even a life as a starter for quite a while.
I would
Well,
like to see him get the rest of the season.
Yes.
I would like to
Here's
see
that-
him get the rest of the
I
season.
think we all
Setting
agree on that
aside
one.
the arm debate, I think what we have to see is he has to get better this year. I know that sounds idiotically simplistic, but what sets him apart, like you were talking about one of the greatest minds in football. I think Heineke's got a pretty good football mind from what I can tell. I mean, he's making something out of nothing about half the time. It's not like we're a
Yeah,
juggernaut.
he's reading 4 and 5 reads in the play.
But he's got to get better. He can't continue to say, yeah, I shouldn't have thrown that, or my feet weren't set. or held on to it. I need to learn. I mean, he's learned to slide. I noticed he's sliding now. He wasn't doing that early on. So
And beyond
that's
the
all I
line
gotta-
is.
you
Sorry,
can't
go
keep
ahead.
making the bonehead throws and the late
Here's-
throws.
Well, the interception on the one where he was trying to throw it to Samuel, I saw a breakdown of that play. Poor form. He did not have his feet set. He didn't snap the hips. There was, it was just he saw it and went for it instead of taking that extra split second to set himself up to do it right. And if he'd done that, we're probably talking about 6 instead of a pick.
That was a major moment. Those 2 interceptions was a 10-point swing in that game, and it was all of the momentum. So I'm going to put it as simplistic as my brain wraps around it sometimes, and it's how I truly judge a quarterback, is when you start having a conversation where you kneeling the ball down 3 times is more effective than your play on the field, it's got to get better. If we had walked out and on those 2 drives, if he had, or from first down, had kneeled the ball 3 times, we're talking about a 10-point difference in that football game. That's the ball game. You're talking about the entire game right there on those 2 plays, beyond what the defense did, beyond what the rest of the offense did. Giving up the 3 points in the red zone and then throwing an interception from inside your own end zone at the other team's, where they pick it off and they bring it right down to the 14 or wherever it was. And it's a walk-in touchdown.
The situational awareness, man. And I put this, I've defended Scott Turner a lot. And I hear what Mark was saying earlier that we don't know. Maybe it was a running play and Heineke audibled out of it from the 2-yard line 3 times in a row. But here's the thing. They have a damn headset. You tell him, do not you're running the ball. This is not a passing play. I mean, it's not like he doesn't have control over the quarterback. So I just feel like you have to have situational awareness in that moment that we don't need to score on this drive. We don't even need a first down.
We just need to stay alive.
Turn over the ball. That's the only thing we need on that drive. Do not turn over the ball on a short field.
As frustrated as you get about give up plays, you need the offensive coordinator needs to be smarter than us. We're passionate. We need to don't give up. Don't run the ball 3 times and punt. That's ridiculous. Why are you being such a, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a wimp. I'm not even going to say the word because God knows we'll get canceled. But the simple fact is you need to be smarter than that. You need to have a game plan there. You need to tell Heineke, we're running the ball 3 times. If you don't like it, you're not my quarterback, because it's more valuable for us to punt. It's almost more valuable for us to take a safety there than it is to give up an interception and let them have that short of a field. Just my opinion. So,
All right.
anyways,
So Kansas City.
I think there's I think there's an equation here that we can beat them, but it's kind of a long shot.
So you know who has the worst defense in the NFL?
Kansas City.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, about that, I did a little research before coming on, and they have played the number 5 offense, the number 1 offense, the number 7 offense, the number 14 offense, and the number 8 offense.
They were all good because they got to play against Kansas City.
Yeah.
But yeah, and hey, one of those teams, if I'm not mistaken, also played Washington. Buffalo, correct?
And the
Yes.
Chargers. Have they
Yes.
played
And-
the Chargers yet?
And the Chargers. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, point taken. Point taken. But if they have a weakness, it's their defense is okay.
I believe
They're 28th against the pass and 29th against the rush. Statistically, they're bad. They're not
And
okay.
32nd overall and points scored, they're pretty awful too. But then again, so are we. We're the second worst. They're the worst. Points scored.
So what this is working out to be is a potential for the highest scoring combined game in the history of the NFL, which is great for the neutral, because it's going to be an awesome game.
It's going to be an exciting game.
But for the rest of us, I need a bottle of Tums and a bottle of bourbon.
So we're 1-9 against them all time. The last time we beat them, brace yourself, was at RFK in 1983.
Wow.
That's the last time we beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wait, that was 1993? We weren't even in
1983.
Oh, 83.
They have literally not beat the Chiefs in my lifetime.
And they've never played Mahomes, so that's, add that in there.
But
Wow.
to my point, I think there's a way to do this, and the way that we need to do this is we need to start out almost exactly like we did last week. 2 turnovers in the first 3 drives. Mahomes has as many turnovers this year as he had all of last season. There's been numerous breakdowns on multiple NFL shows talking about how he's starting to get too comfortable making the play. So this team needs to be opportunistic.
He might also be trying to make up for the fact that his defense is terrible.
Because he knows he's not
trying to force the issue.
Which I think Heineke's doing some.
Yeah. I don't think we win a track meet if we're behind at any point. It needs to be 10-0 or 14-3 or 14-7.
Isn't that how the Eagle game went with them? Didn't the Eagles jump out on top of them?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know it was close right up until, they hung right with them. You know what's going to happen, right? This is going to end up being a 13-10 game.
Probably.
So
Even we might do what I say and we might lose anyways. I'm not saying that this is a recipe for victory. I'm just saying if we have a shot, there is a chance, and I think this is how we do it.
I think you're right. If the Chiefs pounce on us,
It's
and it's 14-0 before we can blink, it's over.
I don't know how this plays out, because I thought last week was a must-win game and one we should have won. But both of these teams are 2-3, and the Chiefs, they're looking at the Chargers at 4-1 and the Broncos and the Raiders, who are both 3-2. They lose this game, it's an uphill battle for them to make the playoffs down the stretch. I know Mahomes is one of the best
Are you
quarterbacks.
smelling a trap game? Is that what I hear you're talking about here?
I don't know. It's a trap for somebody, but I think they have to feel pretty good coming into the game, regardless of their defense. A couple of things I saw that I took note of: Tyreek Hill, who's their leading receiver by far, has not practiced this week because he's banged up. So whether or not they're resting him, kind of like what we've been doing with Curtis Samuel, or whether
Neither has Hilaire.
or he's not going to play, I don't know. Their kicker, Butker, has not missed anything this year, so that could be a big factor given
He's
where
He's due.
And let's see, they have a pretty good running back in Edwards-Helaire, averaging 4.7 yards.
Yeah, he's questionable. He's on the
I don't
injury
think he's
report.
going to play this week.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention is they have one of the best kickoff returners in the league. Byron Pingle is his name, and he has,
Except for DeAndre Carter. Come on, man.
he's averaging 24.7 yards per kickoff return.
Well, if we're giving him a chance to return kickoffs, then we're failing. We
Yeah.
need to be kicking it off through the end zone.
Yeah, and if there's one thing Hopkins actually does really well
Kick
consistently,
it out of the end zone.
put the ball in the first row.
Yeah, that's 100%.
So,
I-
it's one of those things I discovered today. Tyreek Hill is kind of feast or famine, and just like Washington with McLaren, if Hill doesn't go off, Kansas City doesn't win. He's got 2 games with like 200 yards receiving, and they won both of those. His other 3 games are all under 100, and they didn't win. They win any one of the 3 of them.
So I
Well-
have a tidbit for Jack Del Rio. They only have 3 rushing touchdowns all year. In fact, 2 games they had no rushing touchdowns. So when they're in the red zone, just a hint, Mr. Del Rio,
They're throwing the ball.
they're not going to.
Somebody let Landon Collins know so that this week he's prepared.
Yeah.
Well,
We didn't know they
here's-
did that.
I've got this vision of this game where it's 3rd and 8, and we've done a pretty good job of containing them. And on 3rd and 8, we get some pressure, but Mahomes does what he always does. He steps up through the line and starts attacking the line of scrimmage, looking downfield and rolling right and left. And Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and their cast of thousands are running around against our disciplined secondary out there. That's going to be how this game goes. It's going to be kind of a playground deal.
And
Yeah,
I think it's a
Mahomes is their
playground deal the other
second-
way too.
Yeah.
Mahomes is their second leading rusher, which is no surprise, but I just don't know how will they spy him? What will they do I don't know. He can beat you in the pocket too, so I'm not sure that helps.
I
all
can
that
pretty
much.
much guarantee it won't be Jamin Davis.
Yeah, I was about to make the same comment. 13 snaps.
13 snaps. Yeah, we lose Bostic. I almost said Jeff Bostic. Wow, am I dating myself or what? We lose
Well, you're dating
Bostic.
everybody because we instantly, my mind went the same place.
And all of us were thinking that Davis was going to get more snaps this week. And
13.
and he gets less. Now, I did see something of a defense of that. We didn't play our base defense, what is considered our base defense last week, on a single snap. Which I found very interesting. And that's
he
where
just
Davis
lost
has
out
been
there?
getting most of his plays. That's where Davis has been getting most of his snaps, is in
In
that
base.
base defense.
So we know Davis is this beast of an athlete. That's what got him drafted with just a year of experience at Kentucky. So my question is he just so clueless and lost out there that they don't feel like they can put him out there? Because I don't know what other rationale would there be?
I was listening to the radio and somebody mentioned, oh my God, who was it? Might have even been EB from the Sports Junkies. Said he was talking to somebody, and the Kamara touchdown was about as basic of a read as you can ask for from a middle linebacker, and he read it wrong. Now take that for what it's worth. The guy's played 4 games. He's played 4 more games in the NFL than the 5 guys on this podcast have. So,
Behind
what? Yeah, exactly. So let's be real.
So is
And-
JOK. I'm just saying.
I know
So is
that,
Davis.
but we're also, well, that's fair. And there's a lot of argument that he is not living up to what, and I'll admit, I don't think he is. If you want to, we can get into that conversation if you want.
Yeah, but all right, he's a beast of an athlete, and we all know that his claim to fame is shutting down Kyle Pitts in college. Why do we have Cole Holcomb covering Kamara out of the backfield?
Well, here would be
I mean-
my argument to that. You can't put Jamin Davis, as inexperienced as he is at Mike linebacker, and have him control the defense. There's just no way you can do that. He might be able to affect the play, but the middle linebacker controls everything. He is the quarterback of your defense. Now, I'm not arguing. Look, Jamin, if he picked where he was picked, if he is not contributing more right now, I'm not saying he's a bust, but you start to question the pick. And it's fair. Maybe it's not the right pick. He might be good in 2 to 3 years, and that's fine. We'll see what happens. But at the same time, is if this guy can't wrap his head around the scheme, the last thing you want to do is trot him out there and have him run your defense.
Yeah,
But
the
then
answer
the
to the question is no, he's not ready to play. Should he be ready to play this close in? I don't know, guys. We're giving Taylor Heineke a pass because he's 5 games and 5 starts into his career.
And he's
Davis-
28 after
Davis
playing
played-
4 years
Davis
in
played-
college.
Davis played 1 year in college as a starter
That's a good point.
in the SEC. He's a baby. He might be a Pro Bowler in 2 years. That doesn't make it a bad pick. I've never expected rookies to step in and be contributing starters ever, but I'm old from the old school. I'll worry about it when I see him out there failing. I'll be more concerned than not seeing him out there. You know what I mean? I think they're waiting
Well, that's
until he's
the other
ready.
thing is the counter to my argument is, okay, well, we're not winning without him. Let's lose with him and actually have a purpose.
Well, we might
know what
this
I mean?
That
weekend.
might be coming.
Well, I
That
think-
might be coming if we win 2 more or we lose 2 more
I
straight.
think Rivera really did expect us to be 3-2 right now,
Hey,
and he
so-
continue working the guy in.
We don't want him controlling the defense. That's great. Put him out there at strong safety. He can't do any worse job than Landon Collins right now.
I would put him at will. I'd put him at your weak side. Let him cover your tight end.
You guys kill me. I gotta say it. You guys kill me with coordinating our team like that. I love it.
Well, I've watched Landon Collins make the same damn mistake.
I'm
4
with
weeks
you,
in a
man.
row,
He-
and, oh,
Bob, there was one play in the New
The
Orleans
highest
game.
paid defender on the team. Is that who you're talking about?
There was one Landon Collins play, and it may have been a long touchdown, but they happened to ISO him on the replay, and he's off of the left side, and he starts sort of backpedaling, and he's half turned, and he's just kind of casual, and the ball is being thrown behind him, and he's kind of casually turns around. He is not going full blast. It just looked so bad. I'm gonna have to find that play. I'll share it on the board, a YouTube of it or something, but It was a pretty bad indictment of a starting, highly paid professional athlete. It was not pretty.
So, as we're concluding, and before we get into the prediction, I do want to double down on this. I said lose with a purpose. Rivera this week came out and said his words literally were, "You kind of hope 7-9 wasn't good enough to win the division last year, so people didn't have such high expectations." That's a quote. That's not paraphrasing. He said that. So
That bothers
how
you?
do you what?
That does not bother me. I think that's a pretty candid observation to make.
It's fair, but his actions don't speak to that. If that's the case, then why
How
are we
so?
signing William Jackson and not keeping Moreland? Why are we signing Ryan Fitzpatrick and not playing Allen Heineke?
I think we
Well-
signed Fitzpatrick because we couldn't get Matt Stafford.
But then if you're worried, if this is a developmental year and you're not looking at this year like you're going to build on this division title and you're looking at running at it, why would you even bring Fitzpatrick in?
I don't
Well,
think you
because he
bring
knows how
him.
to run an NFL offense. I mean, it's hard to be training young players in an offense when your quarterback doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. And I think that probably coming into the season is a fair description of Allen and Heineke. I mean, they're both have some skills, but neither one of them has any real long-term experience. So I think they had to have a veteran quarterback from somewhere. But I do agree that, I don't know, I think it's one of those things where he said the truth out loud, probably without realizing how much attention it was going to get. But I don't really have as much of a problem with it as a lot of fans.
So do you
I
guys
didn't like it, but I think when you're losing, there's nothing a coach says that sounds right.
well do you
I mean-
then I guess my question is, do you guys believe that this year was always a developmental year?
Once Matt Stafford went somewhere else and he had to settle for a 38-year-old journeyman and or Taylor Heineke, yeah, I think he reset his expectations too.
Yeah.
And it was
I-
all media hype and
I thought, I'm sorry, I thought the defense was going to be a lot better. I thought if we had competent play at the quarterback position, this team could win 8 or 9 or 10 games. This
Yep.
defense is so outside the realm of what I thought it would be. I can't imagine anybody, even the coaches, expecting the defense to play like this because it's a developmental season. This reminds me of 2006, or I'm sorry, 2004. Gibbs' second year. After that first year, they were ranked 3 on defense and they were awesome. And we were like, if we could just get a quarterback, we'll be great. And then for some reason, the defense just played terribly that second year. And, there was no explanation. And this feels the same way. I mean, I know our secondary isn't playing well and Collins isn't playing well, but there's no reason to expect this defense to be playing like this, right?
There was no reason to expect it. And frankly, nobody expected it, not just us, but the whole reason that we got all the hype in this offseason as well. This defense is going to, at worst, be okay. They'll be good, if not great. Instead, they've been 31st in this, 29th in that. They're awful. Something isn't working in that coaching room and in the locker room. The message isn't getting through. I suspect we'll hear about it. Maybe after the season, we're going to find out there were some issues there with personalities or something. But something clearly did not stack up.
And
were
it's
you gonna
not
say,
like
Bob?
sorry, go ahead.
Bob, you were going to start talking. And then,
No, I wasn't. No,
oh,
I was just
okay,
listening.
sorry.
I was just going to say, it's not like we've played a murderer's row of offenses. I mean, some of the offenses have been good, but even against the bad offenses, our defense has given up a ton of points.
Right. The Giants ran up and down the field on us and the Saints did. But,
And the Falcons.
And the Falcons.
our best defensive performance was against Justin Herbert in the opener, right? We only gave up 20 points. How would that look this weekend?
I would
I'll
Well,
take
they
that.
kneeled down in the red
now
zone.
Herbert's
too.
had 5 games.
All right. So we've already hit almost 90 minutes here. So what's going to happen this weekend? We'll go around the horn. When we had Disco on, I put him on the spot. Henry, I'm going to lead you off here. Washington at home against the Chiefs. What happens?
I think we're going to see something similar to the Eagles game. I think we might be able to keep up for a half, and it'll probably end up something like 38-24.
38-24. All right. I'm assuming you mean Chiefs.
Yes, I'm sorry, Chiefs.
Okay.
I'm
Don,
shocked.
what do you got?
I can't with a straight face predict a win, even if their defense is horrible. And I think, I don't know if it was Henry who made the point about the opponents that the offensive units that they've sucked against have been pretty good teams. So I do think it's going to be a shootout. I think Heineke's going to put up, 28, 31 points, but I think Mahomes is going to eat us alive and he'll put up 38. So I would call it like 38-31. It won't look as bad as it really is because we managed to get some scores, but I do think there's a very slim chance that if our defensive backfield could actually cover some people, especially if Hills doesn't play or Kelsey doesn't play, or that if they could tighten up, I do think the defensive line's starting to come together a little bit, and that could change that could swing it in a different direction. But I mean, I can't predict a win, even though I want to.
Bob, what do you got, brother?
Yeah, I'm in that same ballpark. I don't think anybody who's watched the last 2 games, 3 games, 4 games can predict a win this weekend. I do think it's a relatively close game, but I think it's a relatively close game because neither defense is playing well at this point in time. I don't see Kansas City being able to stop McLaren or Gibson, and Tyreek Hill just scares the living bejesus out of me. The only way he wouldn't scare me this weekend is if I had him on my fantasy team. And sadly I don't. I tried to get him in every league I was in, and like the guy 2 people before me took him. It was really irritating. Derek, you didn't take him, did you? Because you took every other guy I wanted. Right. So
it was not me on that one.
Yeah, I'm thinking honestly, my fear is that Mahomes hangs 40 on us. I'm gonna say 38-33 Kansas City, but I can totally see Mahomes hanging 42-45 on us without any kind of a problem at all. Granted, I can also see Taylor Heineke throwing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns this weekend too. He and McLaurin having a career game that they never repeat. So
I think we have. I think it's probably a game up through the half. I think Mahomes is able to score whenever he needs to. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as it might be. If we were going to put 48 up on them, I think they'd get 51. I don't think we will. I think Heineke probably gets a couple of touchdowns, but in the fourth quarter, they get a touchdown late because we've scored to make it interesting. I think it ends up being like 41-24 is what's in my head.
Mark, who's their backup? Because that would be another wild card.
Chad Henne.
Yeah, Chad Henne, who came in, was it in last year's playoffs or the year before, and played really well.
Yeah,
and
he hit
finish off a
Tyreek
game.
Hill. He hit Tyreek Hill on a 4th and 1 to lock up the playoff game. If I'm not
and did very well. But yeah, it's a different game if Chad Henne's playing.
Oh,
Then it's 31-24.
I think I'm hopeful here, kind of hopeful. I think we kind of make a game of this. I think it gets a little interesting, but I can't pick us to win it. I think we end up like I'm going to go 31-27. Maybe, and that might simply be a simple, we score, it's 31-20 and we score with 3 minutes to go or even less than that. You know what I mean? It very well could be that kind of a game. But I'll go 31-27. Good guy. So nobody's predicting a win here.
No, not this week, which means we're all going to be wrong, and this will be the one they decide to show up and play.
And
I'm okay
hey,
with
that's
that.
fine. If I need to pick against them for the rest of the season, and they win football games, I'll do it. I'm happy
Yeah.
to be wrong.
One final question. How much misogyny, racism, and anti-homosexual acts do we see during the broadcast? Are we okay? Or
Acts?
Acts like like they're actually going to act it out. Like, we got finger puppets. What do you mean?
I'm just concerned, it's going to bleed over.
This is the
Okay.
NFL
Sorry.
produced by Ron Jeremy. I don't know what's going on.
Do we know who's broadcasting the game? Because they're going to be talking about it.
Oh, it's going to be every
It's
commercial.
going to be really rough to listen to the broadcaster. So
Yeah.
turn it down and put the radio on. Listen to Bram.
What's the over under on mentions for all this?
6.
Oh,
How many times are they going to mention John Gruden? That'll be the question.
John Gruden and Bruce Allen.
or Bruce Allen. You have to include Bruce
Yeah.
Allen because that's how they're gonna crowbar this in there.
Every time somebody says 650,000 emails, you got to take a shot.
I've seen it.
I'll be at work. It's not gonna be pretty. Real quick though, like if you look at the schedule upcoming, it's got a lot less daunting than it did when we predicted this.
It
Yeah,
has.
we have the Chiefs and the Packers, but then we play the Broncos, who are nobody without Bridgewater. The Buccaneers, Tom Brady just severely sprained his finger. So is he going to play tomorrow? Yeah, but we'll see. Obviously, he's Brady. But then the Panthers, they're beatable. The Seahawks will not have Russell Wilson. The
Maybe.
Raiders just got their coach fired.
Yeah, you just stole my overtime question.
Oh, we can go to overtime. So we'll sign out and we'll get back on overtime. I'm going to go get another drink. It's been fun, brothers. If you guys want to hang out for overtime, it's the same place it is, youtube.com. Find us, bgobsession.com, and subscribe. Thank you,
Henry,
brother.
thanks for coming on,
Yeah.
brother. We'll do it
Yes,
again.
sir. It was a pleasure
course.
having you, Henry.
It was fun. Thanks for letting me do it.
Hail.
Hail.